You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. So great to have you here today on this Total Wellness Tuesday episode of the Cabral Concept, where we are about to dive into the relationship between higher levels of insulin and sugar in the blood and inflammation and what that does to the body. So I want to take you through a little quiz to start today, see if you have any of these signs and symptoms of dysregulated blood sugar. And if you do, what to do next, like what is that next step so that it does not turn into a greater dis-ease of the body. And I believe that a lot of us, a lot of people out there right now where you're like, I'm not really that, I haven't put on that much weight, or I'm not that overweight, so blood sugar is probably not that big of an issue. Or I don't have any diagnosed disease, so it's probably not that big of an issue. I'm telling you right now, all of these things lead to the eventual dis-ease in the body. We want to take care of them right now, not just for body transformation. That's why I made this a wellness, right? A Total Wellness Tuesday show rather than a Weight Loss Wednesday show. I wanted to make this about getting your body back to a state of proper homeostasis, of the body being able to not be in high or low blood sugar, and also helping those people right now that are dealing with higher levels of blood sugar, higher levels of fasting blood sugar. And I've done many podcasts on that. So I'd love you to check out those shows. Easiest way to get to those shows would be go to stephencabral.com/podcasts. Simply type in glucometer, fasting glucose. Either one of those will take you to those shows. Typically just glucometer because I usually recommend it on those shows. So just go back to stephencabral.com/podcasts. Go back to the previous shows on how to actually check your blood sugar, because I'm not going to go through that today. I want to make sure that we're kind of keeping it to one topic. What I want to go through right now are some of those signs and symptoms of dysregulated blood sugar so that you can get back on track if this is a real issue. Because I'm also going to go through what are the causes then of dysregulated blood sugar. Okay, so we're going to go into how it affects your inflammation. So let's go through some of those right now. Mildly dysregulated blood sugar can lead to feelings of shakiness, some trembling, some dizziness, blurred vision, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, perspiring, feeling nervous or anxious, feeling a little bit weak, maybe even some numbness or tingling around the mouth, the lips, some nausea, sudden hunger, headaches, fatigue, or even an increase in heart rate. So those are some mild signs of dysregulated blood sugar, especially as you go from high blood sugar down to low blood sugar. And I'll explain how that happens in just a moment. Then we have some more increased feelings of dysregulated blood sugar. More irritability, agitated, feeling a little bit confused, lack of coordination, dropping things, kind of forgetfulness, difficulty speaking or slurred speech. And the highest level is this: mental confusion, fainting, dizziness, loss of consciousness, seizures, inability to swallow. Now that's its highest level. Most people will never get there, we hope, right? But we want to look at what are a lot of the other ones though. The blurred vision, the dizziness, the difficulty concentrating, remembering your words, feeling nervous or nauseous or some fatigue or headaches, sudden hunger, dizziness, irritability, agitation, confusion, lack of coordination. I can remember, I really can, I can remember specifically around 11, 12 years old through most of high school of dealing with a lot of these issues. And it was because, one, I wasn't eating the right foods. So that was a big part of it. So I'll just talk about that for just a moment. I wasn't eating the correct foods. I was eating foods that spiked my blood sugar, and then it would crash down a couple hours later. And I talk about this, and I'm going to mention it again today. You know that I'm not a big believer in high protein diets or just straight protein diets. And if you don't know, you can go back, you can check out those shows, right? But I don't believe in a diet really too much higher than about 20% of your diet, your macros coming from protein. And that's because of the long-term research that we know on the elevation in cancer and other inflammatory markers in the body. But I'm also a believer that you can't eat too little. And we seem to be in two different boats. So a lot of the people that are going completely plant-based, which again, like more of a vegan-based diet, understand, support, want to help. But here's the deal. A lot of people, they're not even getting 25, 30 grams of protein a day because they look at these Instagram-based infographics talking about how there's a lot of protein in broccoli and there's a lot of protein in this. And yeah, relatively true if you would eat an entire bowl of it. But there's not enough for a normal serving of broccoli. So I want to be really careful about that. I've really broken down the myths about the analogy of, well, look what elephants eat. Well, you're not an elephant. And I broke that down. I looked at how the human body works and that you're not eating the 400 pounds of food a day and all of that. So again, we have to look at things from a realistic perspective. So the first one is this. A lot of people have dysregulated blood sugar. I'll talk about what that is in just 1 second. From simply not eating enough protein at the meal before. And I tell people, if you're hungry within an hour to an hour and a half, 2 hours after eating, most likely it was protein. It's most likely the macro you were missing at the meal before. Okay? Most likely the macro you were missing at the meal before was protein if you are hungry within an hour or two after eating. And just look at that. And it doesn't mean that you need to sit down to a huge steak. You know that I'm not a proponent of that. What I'm saying is this. You need to get more protein in terms of ratio to your carbs and fat. Try that first. That's going to work in like 80% of people, 8 out of 10 people. Some people may need more fat. Some people just may need more food. They may need more fiber. So it's possible for all of the macros to be short. Carbs may not have enough fiber, might not have enough carbohydrates. Fat may not have enough good fat. And then the other one is the protein, and that's the one I recommend going after first because that seems to be what's going to satiate people the most. So check that out first. Most people, adults, 15 to 20 grams per meal. If you're a little bit bigger, maybe 25 grams per meal. Most people don't need more than that. Somewhere between the 15 and 25 grams per meal. Now again, this is coming from somebody that used to eat around 300 grams of protein per day. And each one of my 6 meals contained about 50 grams of protein. That was gluttonous. It was a different time in my life. I didn't have this type of knowledge that I've learned just over the years. And I was really interested in natural bodybuilding. And I wanted to get my body as big as I could, right? And so I'm not going to lie and say it didn't work. Eating more protein helps you build more muscle in general, as a generalization, okay? Your body needs those amino acids, especially if you trend more towards the ectomorph, okay? Really, really important. But we're doing this for overall health. Now, this is important to look at as well, to keep you satiated, to make sure that you don't drop into these feelings as well. The other part is this. If you are someone that's fasting too long and experiencing these symptoms, you might be taking your fast too long. Now, if it's 1 day a week because you're doing a 24-hour fast or something like that, that's part of the process sometimes, okay? And it depends on if you need to break that fast or not. But if this is happening to you every day, this is actually causing a great amount of stress on your body. You can't just deny it, meaning that I've talked about why some people just don't do great at skipping breakfast. Because if you produce higher levels of cortisol, higher levels of stress hormone, that oxidizes the body. Your body's going to start to age real fast. You'll see it in your hair, your skin, your nails. They will start to look older. You'll start to get more thinning hair. You'll start to get thinner skin, more wrinkles, more fine lines, more age spots, more oxidation. Really important to look at that, okay? Really important. So now that we've gone through that, let's talk about how having dysregulated blood sugar can lead to inflammation. And a lot of people just link it to high blood sugar. But you can get inflammation from low or high. And here's why. The higher so basically, when you have more blood sugar, higher levels of sugar in your blood, it's going to elevate levels of insulin. And that insulin is going to trigger inflammatory cytokines. Okay, I talked about this. I did a video on this. You can go to stevencabral.com/BRMI. StephenCabral.com/BRMI if you want a whole video presentation on how all of this happens. I won't go through the technical side necessarily today, but I will let you know this. If you consume alcohol nightly, if you eat a lot of processed carbs and processed food, most likely your blood sugar is elevating. And when it does, your pancreas, your body, sends insulin into your blood to take the glucose, the sugar, which will start to really deteriorate your body, and it pulls it somewhere safe, okay? It's going to pull it ideally into your cells, and it's going to pull it into your liver for stored glycogen. If everything's full, it will start to then move it into and create it and turn it into body fat, okay? That's the simplistic way to say it. But what happens a lot of times is this, is that the higher your blood sugar, the more your body has to respond with increased insulin output. The more insulin you put out, the more inflammation you will most likely have. And over time, the deadening of the sounds of your cells to the signals of insulin. That means they're going to eventually say, you know what, we've been dealing with this for far too long, and those receptors and the cells start to become insulin resistant. And what that means is this, is over time, with the alcohol, with the processed food, with the excessive carbohydrates, and it's not just that, it's also high levels of protein in meat as well. It can cause blood sugar spike. Just one example is, let's say you take in 40 grams of whey protein on an empty stomach. It'll spike your blood sugar. Let's say you take in a really large serving of just red meat, nothing else. It'll still spike your blood sugar. It's the glycemic load as well that matters. Okay, so that does matter. Over time, this will start to shut down the cells, which means you'll start to put on more body fat, but you'll also have more circulating blood sugar, which can create more oxidative damage, which means it starts to break things down and age them faster, more free radical damage for both the body and the brain. That's internal and external. And remember, a lot of the external sides of our body are internal aging. We see them on the outside, but think about that as a window into what's going on the inside of your body. Really important to look at it. So let's start to break this down a little bit more though, because it's kind of like, well, it's just out there right now. Sugar's not good for us. Okay. But when sugar leads to higher levels of insulin, which leads to higher levels of inflammation through inflammatory-based cytokines, and we need to look at what it does. Okay, so let's start with the heart. When you have higher levels of blood sugar and insulin, it inflames the lining of the arteries. And this can lead to hardening of the arteries, increased cholesterol production, because if you're getting nicks and cuts from the inflammation in the arteries, cholesterol acts as a masonry glue, a binder. So your arteries can actually build up calcium and cholesterol deposits because of inflammation, not just because of cholesterol in the diet. This is important to look at, especially since our liver controls about 80% of the cholesterol that's manufactured in the body every day. Important to look at that. So it's not always just the foods that we eat, but also the level of inflammation that we have. Now, again, inflammation can come from many different food sources, but we're talking and forms in life. But we're talking about right now, higher levels of sugar. And those higher levels of sugar are predominantly going to come from our diet, which in all three macros, too much protein, too many processed carbs, not enough fiber with it. And also, too many high omega-6s and oxidized fats. Those are our vegetable-based oils that we cook with over and over, like the canola oil and the soy oils and I would even go so far as to say any oxidized fat, really. I'm a big believer in healthy fats, but I'm a bigger believer in using them non-cooked, non-oxidized. I think we have to be really careful with cooking with a lot of fats. We honestly do, because they do become oxidized. There's a lot of people cooking with ghee and grass-fed butter and coconut oil. And it's a much smarter choice. If you're going to cook with something, yes, those are saturated fats. However, what we do is we add those while we're cooking. We add more fat afterwards. And next thing you know, we have a super high-fat diet. That's not necessarily healthy either. And also, if you're cooking at high heat, it still breaks down eventually a lot of those saturated bonds too in those fats. So let's just be careful with the amount of fat that we are cooking with, or if any. Add it as a dressing afterwards. Much healthier choice. Okay. So it can affect the heart. Higher levels of inflammation can absolutely affect the heart. One thing that we know is we need to test for homocysteine on our blood work, CRP, besides just triglycerides and your lipid panel for cholesterol, HDL, LDL, etc. All right, really important. The next one is this. How many people out there do we know right now with joint-based pain? So many people, right? Stiffness in the joints, pain in the joints, arthritis, whether it be rheumatoid or osteoarthritis. We have to at some point realize that, like, we have people do our detox all the time and their joint pain goes away. And I don't want you to say, well, I just need to stay on a detox my whole life. No, that's not it. What we realize is this, is that what we eat really does matter. The toxins that we build up in our body really do matter. And that by regulating blood sugar, which is what a functional medicine detox does, okay, and by regulating healthy levels of blood sugar, healthy levels of inflammation, it enables us to decrease inflammation at a homeostatic level, help to put good foods in the body, and when inflammation's down, blood sugar is regulated, a lot of times those inflammatory cytokines, they're not there. They don't exacerbate that joint pain any longer. It's insane to look at that, but it really is true. I mean, just for my own life, I don't have any joint pain. I don't have any stiffness. Feel good. I used to. I was much younger then, and I had it worse. The funny thing, though, is I know my food triggers. And sometimes it's not even from unhealthy foods. If I overdo my grains, if I overdo my nightshades, I will start to get some joint pain. And it's always in the same area. It's like it's my tell. It's in my fingers, my thumbs particularly. So it's an indicator for me. I don't need to be medicated. I need to clean up my diet. I need to make sure that I'm on the right track. And so things that even could be health foods. Again, remember, tomatoes are a nightshade, right? A lot of herbs can be in the nightshade family. So this is for me. This is not for most people. Most people, it's simply from eating too many of the processed carbs, too much alcohol. And it can be gut-based issues as well. Candida, SIBO, all of those things. H. pylori, they absolutely affect autoimmune and also joint-based pain. Okay? Let's look at another one. Poor circulation, cold hands and feet, Raynaud's, which so many people have, erectile dysfunction. Why would this happen? Poor circulation. Why would poor circulation happen? Because of inflammation. Well, as everything's being constricted, as even red blood cells are beginning to clump together, you get poor blood flow. So you get poor blood flow to the extremities. And when we look at that, we see all of those diseases of the body. The cold hands and feet, potentially the lowered thyroid. We see the weakened ability for the hair to grow strong and for the nails, for the erectile-based dysfunction issues in both men and women. Okay, that's important because in women, we also have something called sexual arousal disorder. All of this matters, and all of it matters in terms of inflammation and circulation. Raynaud's is a huge one. A lot of times it has to do with higher levels of stress and cortisol, but sometimes it's blood sugar, and sometimes it's food sensitivities. All of this matters. The skin, we do a lot of anti-aging in our practice. How many people out there right now would love to reduce fine lines, wrinkles, age spots, grow stronger, thicker hair, nails? Most people would. And yes, using something like our advanced collagen support and getting your daily nutritional support and getting all those things helps. But let's always ask why. Why do we even need these in the first place? Well, we know that we need our basic nutrients because we can't get them all from food. Soil's been degraded, there isn't the same mineral content, not the same vitamin content. So we need some support. But sometimes there's even a deeper reason. Poor digestive strength, that can lead to inflammation. But what about just dysregulated blood sugar? Eating too often or not often enough? 3 meals a day is still the gold standard. I did a podcast on that called, why 3 meals per day? Or just type in 3 meals per day. You'll be able to find that podcast. I'll see if I can even find it for you right now. But I'll get to 3 meals in just a second. And the reason why I want to go over that and end the show is because it gives you then actionable data. You have something to be able to move on. That podcast, as I'm just typing it in, was episode, I believe it was 705. The truth behind your 3 main meals per day. Oh, no, it was actually this one. 705 is a little different. 908. And that can be looking at focusing on your macros as well. So what we'll do is this. I'm going to link you up on today's episode, which is stephencabral.com/1129. And on that show, I will link up. There it is right there. That's the one I was looking for. Episode 859, how and why you should make the move to 3 meals per day. That hopefully will be able to convince you, based on blood sugar and body fat burning, etc., energy, that it's the right thing for most people. Not for everyone. No, I'm not saying for everyone, but for most people. Check out that episode after this, 859. If you've already listened to it, give it a re-listen. If you haven't, check that out right after this. I believe it will be helpful for you for a deeper level of understanding on this topic. Okay. The next one is this, and this will be my last one. I want to make sure that this is an important one. Everyone worries about their brain health, their memory, dementia, Alzheimer's, and even Parkinson's. Everyone's worries about that later in life, 60s, 70s, etc. But the problem is, it's happening right now. Higher levels of blood sugar, lower drops in blood sugar. Hypoglycemia is the low. Hyper is the high. Higher levels of inflammation. All of this is contributing to the breakdown of those neural synapses inside of the brain, which could eventually cause dementia, cause Alzheimer's. And that's why if we want to prevent the things in the future, we have to start doing today. You can't say, oh, well, I'll worry about that if it happens. You can't. By then, you can still do a lot of work, but it's much harder then, okay? Once you've already started to break down those neurons, those neural synapses in the brain, much harder. And that goes for each one of them. Dementia and Alzheimer's, we're really talking about different sides of the same coin, different terminology, and Parkinson's with the actual nervous system as well. Neural synapses, right? All of that matters. When you start to deteriorate myelin sheath, when you start to break down dendrites and the axion and all of the different parts of the nerve, harder to regenerate. You can. Ayurveda teaches us that. It's a longer-term process. Let's work on these things today. And I want to end the show with this, is that you don't need to be perfect. You never need to be perfect, okay? You don't. First, you need to get yourself well, okay? That's going to take 3 weeks of being more on point, 12 weeks to 16 weeks of following a plan. After that, you're going to maintain, and you're going to see what works for you. It's kind of that balancing act. Some people will be able to do a once-a-week cheat of whatever they want. I call it a cheat. You can call it a flex meal. Call it whatever you want. It's basically just breaking your healthy diet, right? Healthy diet is making a beautiful smoothie in the morning with lots of rich color and lots of nutrients, and it's easier in digestion. Health is looking at 2 to 3 cups of veggies with every meal. Plant-based, whole food nutrition. Add in the protein of your choice, okay? Add in some healthy fat, non-oxidized, non-cooked olive oil. Add in some avocado that's non-oxidized. Add that to your meal. Enjoy the benefits of that. We want to stay balanced. Your meal, and again, Ayurveda taught us this 6,000 years ago, should contain some fat, some protein, some carbs. It has to contain all of the different tastes. That's how Ayurveda referred to it as. They didn't say, eat your protein, carbs, and fat. It has to contain the tastes. And that makes us feel satiated, for one, so that we're not looking for that little something extra after the meal. But it gives our body what it really requires. Our nerves, our brain, our body, they need good fat. The tissues of our body need protein. That's everything. That's every cell in the body. Your skin, your hair, your nails, we think of it like that, right? Needs that collagen, needs protein. But we also need our carbs. And a lot of times we forget that as well. Your brain, its primary fuel source and its preferred fuel source is still glucose. And people say your brain's made of 90% fat, you need to eat more fat. No. Just because something's made of fat doesn't mean that it thrives off of fat. Okay? It can work off of fat, and it does. But it thrives off of glucose. But at the same token, I'm telling you right now, you're not supposed to be eating processed foods, but you should be eating some complex carbs. And you should be eating good fruits and vegetables. And you should be getting in 30 plus grams of fiber per day. And you might say to yourself, well, when I do that, I get bloated and I don't feel well and I have digestive issues. I understand. But all you're telling me when you say that is that you have to work on your gut. Candida overgrowth, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, parasites, H. pylori. It's one of those. That's what's causing the bloating. And if it's not one of those, we'll know by the end of 12 weeks, and then we can look at overall peristaltic movement and digestive distress because of stress. ileocecal valve problems. And these are all things I've talked about in previous podcasts. But for sure, you can find out what your bloating is based on an organic acids test, based on a stool test, food sensitivity tests. Those three, gold standard. I mean, they really are the gold standard. You're going to be able to figure out what's wrong. You really will. All of those are available at home. You can run them at home. You can run them. You can get them through Equilibrium Nutrition. They come with a personalized protocol. They come with a health coaching call. They come with my review. Or you can do them with your local practitioner, your local integrative health practitioner, whoever you feel the best fit for you. But you can figure this out. How do you figure out if there's blood sugar dysregularity? Remember in the beginning of the show, we went through that quiz? When you're feeling those symptoms, use a glucometer. I'll link it up again today. Head over to stephencabral.com/1229. I'll put the glucometer in there. When you test your blood sugar when you're having those symptoms, if you're below a 72 or so, you can start to be moving into hypoglycemia. It's causing a good amount of stress in your body. Some people might say the 60s is good for blood sugar. And for some people, it might feel normal. For an ectomorph, a Vata body type, not good. Vata Pitta, not good. They don't feel well in that state. They really don't. For an endomorph, a Kapha body type, it might be perfect for getting into really a lot of fat metabolism. How much fat does a Vata body type really have in their body? Or an ectomorph? Very little. They're a nervous system type. I can't go through all that today. I'm about to go on a different tangent. But that nervous system, it runs on glucose. It really does. Made of fat, a lot of those myelin sheath, but really what we're talking about is glucose to get that body thriving. So here's the thing though. It does not mean eat sugar, but it means they need some carbs, some protein, some fat. So what I want to look at today is this. I want you to move towards 3 meals a day. I want you to listen to episode 859 on why that is. If you're having symptoms like we spoke about earlier, make sure it's not high blood sugar. Make sure it's not low blood sugar. Somewhere between 75 and 95 on that glucometer. When you wake up in the morning, your blood sugar, fasted, should be between 75 and 95. Simple to do. Easy test to run. One last point is this. If you find yourself with higher blood sugar upon fasting, if you find yourself with higher blood sugar 2 hours after a meal, it's not between 75 and 95, 2 hours, 2.5 hours after a meal, maximum. You can use a product called glucose support. You can start to add more fiber to your meals. You can add a little bit more protein to your meals, a little less of the starchy carbohydrates, but we don't want to eliminate them. But here's the thing, and this is where I want to give you a little bit of hope. Your cells will not become non-insulin resistant until they start to turn over. You need new cells. So you start today. The process happens over 90 to 120 days. That's 3 to 4 months. I know we all want the results today. I want them too. I know if we can't have them today, we want them tomorrow. I understand that. But just remember, when you get frustrated in saying that it's not working, it's oftentimes because there has to be some new growth and new cell turnover in the body. And that simply takes time and consistency. So do the right thing over 3 to 4 months. Watch those new cells start to turn over. Stay away from the oxidized fat. Stay away from the high levels of protein. Eat more of a balanced-based diet, predominantly plant-based. 2 to 3 cups of veggies or good, healthy, whatever it might be at that meal. And I'm usually for lunch and dinner, we're talking about 2 to 3 cups of veggies. You can add in the right starch if you want for you. I talk about that on another show. And for breakfast, we're getting some fruit in there to start the day. Low glycemic berries are fine. So you can look at that. But what I want you to begin to do is get back into healthier eating, more balanced meals, 15 grams, 20 grams, maybe 25 grams for some people that are larger body types. Add a meal of protein or trying to put on more muscle. And I want you to use things such as the daily nutritional support, the daily fruit and vegetable blend, the omega-3s to start balancing proper levels of omegas, right? The good gut-based products like daily probiotic support, or run a gut-based test. But you will find your answers. They're out there. This is literally a matter of testing and a matter of time. You'll be able to rebalance your body, and as you rebalance your blood sugar, you decrease inflammation. When you do that, your skin starts to have a healthier glow. You don't have the fatigue, the nausea. You start to feel more balanced overall, less irritable, less mental confusion, less brain fog. We all need more of that. We really do. So hopefully today's podcast was helpful. As always, if it was helpful, if you learned something, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. I appreciate your listens every day, and I appreciate your reviews on iTunes and other media players. Thank you so much. Take care. I'll talk with you tomorrow. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests, or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.